One, and welcome to this. It's the penultimate webinar, in fact, in the September 2021 series, which follows on from the IIM survey published a few weeks back, which is also available on the IIM website to download. My name, for those of you that don't know me, is Bruce Rayner. I'm a career interim or independent executive of getting on now for 28 years. I think I started when I was 12. And I'm a member of the IIM board. You can find my profile on LinkedIn. Please feel free to connect. So just let me explain a little bit about this series of webinars and indeed the member-only events which follow or have been following if we were to follow the normal protocol, which we may or may not do today. And the first one was really all about the data that came out of the survey. The second one was looking at the interim market over the next 12 or 24 months. And then as a departure from what we did in the previous year, we've gone on to look at specialist sectors. And the ones that popped up this year were, the suggestions were transformation, finance, HR, which is today's topic, and next week, same time, same channel, we'll be looking at the market for interim digital specialists. Now, I don't know whether or not clients recognize these labels or providers or even consultants, but that's the way we've chosen to slice and dice it this year. Normally speaking, the first part of this would be a Zoom webinar, lasting about 45 minutes, and then part two would be a members only round table. Because this is a small and select band, I think we're just going to go with the round table format from the get-go, and probably may extend beyond 45 minutes depending on the quality of the questions and the conversation. But I think we can be a little bit more interactive on this one. Please feel free to either submit your questions by the Q&A, not the chat, or by raising your hand. The webinar will be recorded, and that recording will be made available to you. So, without further ado, I don't think we need a fire drill, but if the fire alarm does go off, it probably means that one of our houses is on fire. So hopefully that won't happen. But without further ado, we'll introduce our three panelists. So we have Claire O'Donovan from Eton Bridge. We have Chris Arbid from Interim Partners, and because I've just updated his status, we have Sam Hawkins, the esteemed Sam Hawkins, who's actually panist, because I've misspelt panelist.
I wondered if you meant pianist, and
well, I could, yeah, well, yeah, it's my dyslexia kicking in. There you go. He's now a panelist.
Oh, there we go. Thank you.
So, without further ado, I'll let the panelists introduce themselves and the companies they represent. But I should say that all these guys are ISP royalty who are recruiting for the three, as voted by the members, top three ISPs in the UK today. And so by quality and probably by number, are representing a fair old cross-section of what's going on in the interim market. So I'm sure we'll find this both informational and insightful. So Claire, would you like to kick off and tell us who you are and what you do?
Sure, thanks, Bruce. Hi, everyone. So Eton Bridge Partners, you all know, I'm sure, well known in interim and search market for HR. And we operate across the breadth of corporate leadership, so also covering the main pillars of board, finance, business transformation, and consultancy. And so we work with a really broad range of clients, so everything from startups to SMEs to global blue chips, listed, private equity backed and privately owned, and across all sectors within commerce and industry. I myself have 18+ years experience within HR recruitment, and that's both interim and perm. And prior to all of that, actually, I used to work in HR for my sins in Cranfield School of Management, going back some time now. So that's me. It's nice to meet you all.
Excellent. Sam, let's go to you next.
Hello, I'm Sam. I work for Practicus. We're a interim and now permanent business of almost 20 years standing. We specialise in change and transformation first and foremost, of which HR change and its derivatives are a huge part of that. And we have worked in the HR space since since inception, really. I myself have been working in recruitment for as long as I care to remember, and at Practicus for almost 10 years, of which a big part of that has been either directly recruiting in the HR space or managing our teams that work in HR.
Chris.
Hello there. Thank you for the kind introduction, Bruce. I'm Chris Arbid. I lead the energy markets practice here at Interim Partners. Interim Partners is part of New Street Consultancy Group, and what we do is interim exec recruitment and change and transformation, as well as executive search. And we also do talent assessment, leadership consultancy, and advisory. I've been in this space for 9 years now, and I came into NSCG to build the energy markets practice as a generalist across the C and C-1 space. I have had quite a flurry within the HR space too, so here I am to share my thoughts.
And Chris was saying that, in fact, he had 2 HR assignments came in. Was it yesterday or today?
Today. So back from leave today. So picked up on that this morning.
Excellent. Okay, so look, what we're going to do is just kick off with the question number 1 here, which is, I'm guessing, you know, the factors that you guys see driving the market for the interim HR professional over the next sort of 18 to 24 months. I'm going to come back to Claire on that, if you can open us up on that one, Claire.
Sure. So I suppose it's worth, you know, saying how I see the market at the moment and where we see the factors that are going to affect it going forward. So just from an Eton Bridge perspective, we see the market as being extremely buoyant at the moment. We've seen month-on-month growth, huge increase in volumes of roles from our clients. There was, of course, a summer seasonal dip with live roles over the holiday season being slightly reduced, but now it's back to growth again. And we're sector agnostic at Eton Bridge, so we're seeing this growth across all sectors and sizes of businesses, from startups to SMEs, global blue chips, so really across the board. So the reasons, the areas where we see the growth coming from and the factors affecting this are to do with really change in organizations. So restructures, transformations, drives for efficiencies. We see a lot of businesses held off on restructures or change projects or implementation of new software systems over the last 18 months, and they're now forging ahead with these projects. So there's been, I think as the pandemic has progressed, there's been a huge increase in activity in mergers and acquisitions to the highest level in years. And from that, we're now seeing short-term interim assignments, such as, for example, I had the first strategic HR director for a growing private equity-backed business in the professional services sector, similar role in a founder-led healthcare business, organization design project with another growing consultancy business. So a lot of these around that change transformation piece. And also our FTSE 100 clients have come to us for a variety of roles, from cover for strategic HR director or chief people officer roles to projects around returning teams to the office, HRS implementations, change, transformation experts and reward specialists. So that's the areas really that personally we're seeing that growth coming from.
And we were talking yesterday when we had our sort of warm up about that's clearly, I mean, HR is clearly a leading indicator of what companies are doing in terms of whether it's restructuring or hiring or, you know, things around people in general. And we'll probably get on to talking about what that is, whether or not that's a bellwether for the rest of the economy and other interims. or whether it's a peculiar kind of set of circumstances, Claire. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, absolutely. In the last couple of weeks, there's been a huge increase in talent acquisition. So the requirements for organizations, I've got private equity one where they're bringing in talent acquisition experts to support them in filling roles within their portfolio businesses, and also on the fund side. So, and also other large consultancy firm who are looking to bring in, again, TA people. So it's this growth that we're seeing, and these are businesses who are predicting major growth within their areas. And so they're now looking for that top talent to come in and acquire the people and fill the roles they need to fill. I suppose at the start of the pandemic and during lockdown, a lot of the talent acquisition people and the exec search in-house, they were put on furlough, and clients we advised them to, hold on to good people. I suppose it wasn't possible for everyone. So now we see the market really increasing in that area, and there's a need for organizations to operate really with pace and at speed to bring in the best people in terms of talent acquisition.
Gee whiz. And so Sam, are you echoing that?
Yeah, particularly around that talent acquisition and recruitment. Yeah, we have had 3 or 4 roles in the last 3 weeks on the interim side, particularly around that recruitment and talent acquisition project management. So looking at how they currently do things, how they need to do things in the future, how they need to respond to what is an unprecedented labour marketplace. So are their current talent acquisition systems, or even the people that run their talent acquisition functions, fit for purpose as we move into a world where post-Brexit, post-COVID, I've never seen anything like it in terms of the fight for talent out there. And you have to be super slick to be able to sell your organization, be able to have a systems and procedures in place to give candidates the experience that you are going to get that talent ahead of anybody else. So that has accelerated rapidly the last 3 or 4 weeks, and I can't imagine why that trend wouldn't continue over the next 12 to 18 months. Fascinating,
isn't it, Chris?
Yeah, a couple of things Claire mentioned in particular have come up. What I've seen is really a split with SMEs looking at professionalizing the function. I think some owners and business leaders were caught exposed during COVID and had realized how important the HR function is and should be, and it should be up in a place that works in synergy with leadership. So I did have a few assignments come on where they wanted someone to come in interim at a senior level to come and professionalize a function and then hand over to someone a bit more junior that would come in through the permanent process. A thing I've seen on the more larger cap or listed businesses is they've taken advantage of the downtime. So they're using HR as that function where you can gain real strong stakeholder influence and engagement to roll out change, whether that's through systems or a change in reward. I'm finding that large businesses are using that. So interesting to see where the roles are coming in across Practicus and Eton Bridge. But what I'm finding is more so of a split between the SMEs and the larger organizations. And quite frankly, they're both using it as a time to either upgrade HR function or push through things that pre-COVID no one was bothered about or wasn't really happy to jump on.
Yeah, that's interesting. And Claire, because you're sector agnostic, are you seeing any, is there any hot sectors in particular across the function?
Yeah, we've had a real mix, but some of the areas, I suppose healthcare inevitably is one that's been quite busy for me personally on the interim perspective. A lot of growth both, and that's across smaller private equity backed healthcare, let's say they're services firm really, but operating in that space, to your large global pharmas. So that's an area I've been very busy in, but really because we are so broad, we've a mix from every area. One of my colleagues was recruiting for a travel firm in Italy in March last year. So, you know, who would have thought, but a real mix across all industries within Eton Bridge.
Mm. Sam, are you seeing any kind of sector skew here?
Again, we're kind of sector agnostic, so not particularly, but because of going back to what we discussed around the recruitment issues, and actually another big driver for us, or it seems to be a big trend, is around ER, employee relations, largely in those bigger companies. And obviously a lot of that is being fed through from changes in working patterns and practices and the problems with the recruitment, as we've all read about and seen about. And that feeds into ER, actually. So there's a huge demand for ER professionals across our public sector client base, as well as our private sector client base. In that private sector client base, that then tends to sit with, at the moment, we're seeing a lot of demand within large facilities companies or large services companies. So they are, all of a sudden, that's become, you know, 25–30% of our client base has been that sort of organisation where they've got huge, you know, blue collar workforce that those ER issues sit with.
Yeah. And Chris, you have a sector specialism, so maybe you can talk within your sector about just how that split is working. And, you know, I guess, I mean, I suppose the news from the energy sector yesterday, from a personal point of view, is that my gas provider has gone bust. So I don't know what that means, but from an HR point of view, how are you seeing it?
Well, I sit within the wider manufacturing and engineering team. There's three of us in total, although I specialise solely on the energy practice itself. Because they were classed as key industries and key workers, what you found at first was ultimately it was a mad rush of how do I get people to work safely. Now, and we found there was a lot of work behind that and a lot of consultancy going into it. What I'm finding now, it's more, I believe, or what I saw really from my PE contacts, is they kept kicking the can down the road because they felt assets would drop in price and some businesses would be bargains as such. And the can got kicked so far down the road, you know, we're 18 months plus down it, that acquisitions have come off in the last 3 to 6 months. And what you find is there has been a lot of PE requirements for HR assignments, as well as others, but, you know, we're on the subject of HR. So that's what I have personally found within my sector and across the manufacturing engineering space.
Yeah, that's interesting. And I mean, talking about, so that's the supply side, the demand side from a client perspective. What about the supply side? I mean, have you, in terms of your talent pool over the last sort of, you know, the hiccups of the pandemic, IR35, Brexit, how has that impacted what you're going to be seeing, you think, in the next 18 months in terms of the change of mix potentially in the talent pool? I'll come back to you on that, Chris.
Well, what you're finding is talent's becoming more fussy. You've had people that have been in a set way, working in a set way for what, 10, 15 years, or, you know, for the early adopters of interim, ultimately have been used to traveling around, have been used to staying away from home 5 days a week. And what you're finding is quite a few of these individuals now are just refusing to have to be on the ground or be in the office 5 days a week. So you're finding it's harder in terms of opening up talent pools for roles that require interims to be on the ground. And obviously, you know, not so obvious in all terms, but when it's crises and change, it's quite important that there's a face to a name and that someone is there. So you're finding the talent pool has shrunk when it comes down to have to be in the office, have to be there for 3 to 6 months away from their family and only going back on weekends. But on the other hand, with employers that have been flexible and open-minded, you found the talent pools really opened up because people can work remotely. And also you're finding it's a lot more competitive. So people are a bit more open-minded what they earn. as how do you balance things? You balance your time and ultimately what you're being paid for it, and being home, being around your families, or if you live on your own with your dog, it's a lot more joyful than traveling around all the time and being away from the comforts of your home.
Sam, do you want to pick that up? So on the supply side, any observed changes in the makeup of the talent pool? Or
I think I made this point actually yesterday when we were having a chat, that I've never known the talent pool to be so flexible in terms of actually the types of role they would consider. If traditionally you might have categorized yourself as someone who's looking for permanent opportunities only, someone looking for interim opportunities only, or someone who prefers a fixed term contract and the security of that. Actually, the labour market is so fluid, so flexible at the moment, and clients are also adapting to that. That actually there isn't necessarily, you couldn't necessarily always categorize yourself in one or the other. So interims are considering a huge permanent salary for a period of time, just because that's how the client would like to engage them. And actually, a permanent job, how long is a permanent job for these days? It's for as long as that piece of work needs to be done. So actually, whether you're engaged on an interim basis or whether you're engaged on a permanent basis doesn't really matter. So we're finding that the pool of interims, if you like, that traditionally used to be there is much bigger, because people are flipping between the two.
That's interesting, isn't it? Yeah, and we'll come back to that in a second, I think. Claire, just what's the talent pool perspective from your side of the fence?
Yeah, I'd echo what both the others have said, and particularly there are some, career interims who during the pandemic and couldn't pick up the assignment they wanted, moved across and took permanent roles. So potentially taking some of the interim talent off the market, but also then conversely, permanent candidates who, through changes within their own organizations and becoming immediately available, are now considering interim. So bringing more talent to the market on that side. So yeah, there's been a shift in both ways, I suppose, really. Looking at the pool, talking about something Chris was talking about around the, flexibility and the ways of working, that has massively increased talent pools for organizations. I mean, that's being able to look globally. Eton Bridge, we've placed a number of international interims with our clients all over. And I've had one client where it's a UK business and sourced somebody in Cyprus. They engaged them through their Cypriot entity. I've had somebody from Ireland working with a global business on a global project, but with a UK headquarters for EMEA. And it's just that flexibility that you can look at talent that are anywhere internationally now. So yeah, that's seeing a real increase in some ways, I suppose, of the candidate pool.
Could I just balance to that, Bruce? Would that be all right?
Go on.
Just because I do agree with them. I do agree with both Chris and Claire on that. But just interestingly, in the last 2 weeks or so, we're starting to see a bit of pushback from clients on that flexibility. And I don't know if that's just a brief anomaly, and actually that will stop. But actually, I think it's coincided with the drive back into the office, and this Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday peak that is happening in the city particularly. And I think we are starting to get that. Actually, 2-3 weeks ago, we would have given you the brief and it would have been completely flexible, work from home. But actually, I'm starting to see a little bit more expectation on our candidates.
Well, I was just going to pick up on that in terms of, this morning's news. Don't use the Radio 4, and I think I heard it yesterday as well about is it the government that are coming forward with legislation to say that everybody should be entitled to flexible working from day one. Now, whatever, I don't know what that means. Flexible working in terms of attendance in the office or whether that's hours or whatever that is. But maybe you guys can comment. But I also, I didn't hear the interview, but they were going to have someone on from the client side talking about that he was feeling that was this just a full-time salary for part-time work. And so I wondered if you're getting any kind of murmurings of this, and how you think that's going to play out. Sam, what's you got? Is that a fair, is that even a fair question?
Well, I don't think we know at this point. Yeah, I mean, I read the article today, and I think I might have even heard the interview you're referring to. But I think the point I was making there is, I think the government's always a bit slower to react to what's happening in industry.
Yeah.
And the government mandating the 1 day a week, the option to work from home 1 day a week is fine. Actually, I don't think that's actually going to be much of a problem. I think the world has changed, and I think most organisations will accept that that's okay. And I don't think that going forward is going to be a problem. It's the other expectation that has occurred as a result of the pandemic. And I think it's been a change for the positive. I think most employers would also agree that the ability to work from home is a good thing. But I think, as I'm just starting to see a pushback, from the start of a process to the beginning of a process, that actually all of a sudden we've had a bit of a rethink. People have started to come back into offices, and we're liking that office dynamic. We're liking the fact that people collaborate together, and we think it's a good thing. So actually, it was please be in the office 1 day a fortnight. So actually, that's two. Actually, now we're going to rethink it's 2 days a week, and that hasn't just been one client. That's been 3 or 4 clients.
Yeah. And I wonder, Claire, whether or not there's something peculiar about the nature of an HR role, which does require boots on the ground, or whether that sort of work can be done remotely, and that's the new operating model, if you like, for the digitally enabled interim. What's your view?
I think it totally depends on the role, so the specialism of that role. But we had a client recently it's the first one that we've had in, I would say, the last 6 months, or well, even further, longer than that, where they required the interim to be on site 5 days a week. Now, the reason for that was because it was the crucial project for this interim head of HR they were bringing in, was to bring the teams back to the office. So they really felt that individual should lead by example. Fair enough, I suppose, in that scenario. But the point was, it was really difficult to source for that role, because candidates just don't see the need to be on site 5 days a week. They just don't want to be. So, and I would say the vast majority of all the assignments we've had have really been either hybrid or 100% remote. But as Chris was saying, Sam, sorry, in the last couple of weeks, the assignments we've been working on, which are now coming to a close, which at initial brief were, we can absolutely be very flexible, and yes, it's hybrid working. When it comes to the point of agreeing the actual terms, and you've got the particular candidate you're talking about, we're just beginning to see a bit more, well, okay, let's fix the days that you're in and make it 2 or 3, put it on the contract that it's 3 days in. So I would definitely agree that clients are probably, looking to go down that route going forward. And then, there's the other implications of this around, if somebody is remote, some of my interims are talking about that the hybrid model is really, it adds, to the role, because you're in the office 3 days a week. That's great. You're building relationships, meeting people. The face-to-face contact really can't quite be replaced. But that on the other 2 days a week, it's really good to have some space. So to have thinking time, there's a lot of work in an HR role as well that is achieved perhaps better when somebody takes themselves, to a quiet space and has that space and time, really. So the balance is really strong. I was taking up a reference from one of our long-standing trusted associate pool, and she did an excellent job implementing this HRIS for the client. She didn't ever meet anyone there. It was all 100% remote, and the feedback around how she got under the skin and built those relationships remotely and, deliver on the project, that was all excellent. So, it's interesting point.
Well, it's funny because over the summer, I think early part of the summer, I actually was engaged on an assignment to advise a pensions company in Abuja in Nigeria on some of their IT digital stuff.
Yeah.
It was a private equity backed business. And of course, you know, because you couldn't travel anyway because of COVID, it was Nigeria, it was Abuja, which is Boko Haram country apparently. So so that was all done. That was all done over Zoom, with interesting kind of connectivity issues going down to Africa. But interestingly enough, Chris, maybe you can pick up on where's the supply and demand. So basically, just to summarize this, we're hearing buoyant market, flexible candidates, flexible working. Is that having any material impact on day rate?
Yes, we've seen IR35 come in at the same time as Brexit, near enough, and COVID. So yeah. What you find is a lot of these HR roles, especially the ones in leadership, are coming within that, which already inflates the costs. And you've also got interims out there, you know, true career interims that have a good portfolio and know they have options, saying, well, you know, why should I take the hit? I need a 30% uplift on X to achieve what I was taking home anyway. Bar the IR35 piece, I would say it's actually reduced the total cost. You know, someone who would have charged, say, £800 per day and was used to traveling up, say, to Scotland on a Sunday evening and back on the Friday afternoon, which I actually had someone do over COVID. You know, ultimately, if you could say to that person, but you can work from home, could you relook at your rate? Then they are being quite flexible with regards to what they earn. I'm not saying a substantial reduction, but a reduction of some sort. And I believe it's not just because they're based at home. I believe it's because they know there's others that would be willing to relook at their rate for the privilege of sitting within your own space, and, you know, having your family, your kids, or your partner in the other room that you could go out and have a chit chat with here and there for your own mental space. With regards to insisting someone works on the ground, I'm finding it's a similar cost than it was previously. You have got some people out there who still believe in going into the office, whether it's 3 days or 5 days. Within the discipline of HR, if it's a trade union issue or a crisis, and if it's a leadership role, I just can't see how that can be conducted fully remotely. First of all, the junior people within your team need FaceTime. You know, they need coaching, they need mentoring, whether it's been dictated to them or they've asked for it, or they're not aware it's happening. It's an important part of their career and their experience, and actually them developing themselves. Also, when you go to work, you talk to people that you probably don't have in your phone book as friends, you know, different personalities, different views, different voices. That's also important for our mental health. That's also important for our own development, as we're always developing as individuals as ourselves. So long story short, not too much on the cost end. I'd say more so a reduction if the client's open-minded and flexible on the remote piece. But otherwise, just less of a pull if you demand them to be in 5 days a week, but not where you're not finding anyone good enough, or not situation where, you know, it's detrimental to the quality of interim that you're getting, if that's the case.
Sam, day rates?
Yeah, I agree and disagree. I think I'm actually what we are seeing is that the flexible working or the working from home isn't having much of an impact on what people are charging, because people have their worth. I think if anything, because of the fight for talent, day rates have stayed the same or indeed gone up. But actually what we are seeing is that because of IR35, and because I think clients are being much more discerning about the decision to bring in an interim. So actually, when they come to us with an idea of a budget, actually they're happy to talk about that. That can actually be talked up, or we can represent candidates maybe who are on or above budget. But given the work from home and given there's less face time on the ground, I am seeing that the clients are holding interims much more accountable than they ever have done before. So they are making decisions very, very quickly on suitability of the candidate. You know, you can do all your due diligence, everything you like, and you think you've found a perfect match, but because of the day rate and because they're not seeing what this person's doing all the time, it's very much all they can make decisions on is the output. And I think people are making decisions on these interims very, very quickly in terms of whether there needs to be an intervention or whether there needs to be an extension on the positive side. But I think, day rates are fine. They're being protected. In fact, they're going up. But the demands of the client, I think, are also increasing.
That's interesting, isn't it? Claire?
Yeah, I would definitely agree with Sam on that. What we're seeing at Eton Bridge in terms of day rates, especially in specialisms where talent is scarce, there haven't been any reduction of day rates. Interims are able to, it's a buoyant market. Clients need to move at pace really to secure the best talent, and the interims are aware that there are a number of opportunities available to them. We're seeing people with multiple offers. So therefore the interims are maintaining their rate, I think. Around flexibility, I don't see any, change in terms of people saying, well, I don't have the travel costs, so I'm going to take a few £100 off my day rate or anything. I haven't seen that, to be honest. Around the IR35 piece, yes, we saw, I suppose, looking back a bit, a real spike in blanket inside IR35 determinations initially for roles that undoubtedly should have been outside. And while this is understandable for a variety of reasons, and I know there was a similar initial spike in the public sector 3 years ago, but as in that sector, the rebalance is now taking place, I think, and organisations are genuinely assessing the roles, with the result that a greater number of them are being deemed outside IR35 again. But there's no doubt that the organisation will reduce their pool of candidates available to them if they incorrectly make that assessment and judge the outside roles to be inside, because those candidates can hold out and aware they'll obtain a day rate assignment elsewhere at the rate they're looking for. So, I think we have had some candidates, interims, being happy to be engaged on a day rate or a fixed term contract, or as Sam was saying earlier, I think, considering perm contracts, which they would view as a 12 to 18 month assignment, but, or even being engaged, if the role is inside IR35, we've had people being engaged on through an umbrella company on a day rate as well, rather than going down the fixed term route and increasing their day rate by, maybe something like 20 to 30% to cover the implications of that. But apart from that, I'm not really seeing any drop in day rates for areas, particularly where talent is scarce, and such as I mentioned earlier, the talent acquisition, the internal TA people. I'm not seeing them, having flexibility on the rate. And
for HR interims, are clients valuing the expertise, the flexibility and availability, or the diversity of thought that we like to think sometimes comes with someone working as an interim? Does that hold for HR? I mean, I know it does in things like transformation strategy, where you're looking for, the alternative view sometimes. But what's the predominant kind of skill set demand around why engage in interim? Claire?
Yeah, come back to, I suppose, something again that was mentioned previously around the clients needing to see an immediate result from the interims and seeing, so the key kind of things they're looking for, that ability to hit the ground running, really get under the skin of what's happening in that organisation, lift the lid, deliver results, show output quite quickly. They're coming in for specific projects, so whether that be a transformation piece or an implementation of HRIS, or even covering chief people officer or, you know, gaps in periods. So it's that ability to really deliver quickly. And so the skills then, you know, it's more difficult if you're working remotely to show that, to demonstrate that output quite quickly, I think. So for an interim, I would think that people should really, if you're not working now, think about how you can demonstrate that you've built those relationships to date. You know, consider how you can show that if you've been working during the pandemic, how did you quickly get under the skin of that organization and build that rapport? And, you know, there's nothing like the face-to-face contact. So yes, you can speak to many people on Teams, but how did you deliver quite quickly? So it's those kind of skills, somebody with the ability to just assess the need, quickly build that rapport and relationship and deliver results quite quickly. They're going to be key.
Well, we've got a question from Joe Mims. Hi, Joe. Joe Mims, sorry. Which kind of follows up a little bit on this, I think, Joe. It's and following up on Sam's point earlier about interims taking perm roles and potentially vice versa. I think a lot of that was clearly driven by IR35 and pandemic and uncertainty and the need to potentially stabilize income for those that wanted permanent assignments, potentially. But Jo is saying that she wouldn't consider a perm role because that's not how she delivers. And that picks up on the point I was talking about there earlier about it's a mindset thing. It's diversity of thought as much as it is on providing expertise. But so the question for the panel here is, do you think that once the market has settled down, if indeed markets ever settle down, it will swing back to clients wanting true interims? And of course, that does open up the question of what on earth is a true interim in you or the client's view. So Chris, can you opine on that one?
I think a big part of the play is the actual ISP that the client has come to, or the ISP that the client has, or the individual within the ISP the client has a relationship with. Now, in my eyes, a true career interim would not take a permanent job and then, you know, during COVID, and then decide to leave after 18 months once they found an interim job. First of all, it's not the right way of doing things, and you're kind of leaving the client in the lurch. But by doing that, I do believe that some interims do change their minds during the COVID pandemic and probably felt that they did want to have another permanent stint or two, and were open to that. And fair play, I totally get that. But just a true career interim, in my eyes, has already exhausted their permanent career and then gone in independently off their own back and built up a portfolio of their own work. So why should they ultimately walk away from that and go work as a fixed-term contractor employee? And realistically, what's a true interim in our eyes? You know, left field, it's a delivery driver. Right field, it's an actual pure play consultant. So, you know, realistically, why would they walk away from consultancy knowing that if it was determined correctly, then it would fall outside of IR35 and they should have some work out there? So it's a difficult one, and it all depends on your personal circumstances and your situation and realistically what you want from life. But I've been not so much educating clients, but being very clear on what a true career interim is, and ultimately what someone who has the skill set that they're looking for has, but is more so of an opportunist that just wants a role that pays well, whether it's FTC perm or interim. So I do feel ultimately it comes from the first conversation you have with the client. I think secondly as well, on the note of people walking away from working as an interim for a permanent role, it could make clients question what they actually want in the future and whether they are a pure play career interim or not, and that's something that they might want to consider. Yeah.
Okay, look, we're just gone past 1:15. We're due to have the members only event. I'd just like to say thank you all for participating. I hope to see all of you over on the other link. Sam, hopefully you've got that link, Sam Hawkins there, and we can make that work. So on behalf of everyone, I mean, I found that a fascinating discussion, and I'm not even in HR. So I'm sure the participants got a lot of real great insight on that. Ad Van Rest, you're there. Hope you enjoyed that too. I know you've worked extensively in HR. Ad is one of the alumni of the IIM. Did a load of work on the IIM. I've known Ad for ages. So yeah, we'll need to pick up Ad. Hopefully you're coming across for the members only event as well. Ad is actually an honorary fellow of the Institute, I think. So we'll close this down. Come on to the other link, grab yourself a coffee. I'll open it up straight away. So I'll see you on the other side. Thank you all.
Great. Thanks so much.
Thank you.